Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thursday Night Live with Rabbi Pinchas Winston. This is Yehuda Shamroff from Ramat Beit Shemesh. I'm stepping in for Josh Wander. I think he's in the army. I'm not sure what he's doing. He's obviously doing something good for mankind and for Yiddish kind and for Israel all the time. Don't forget, we are sponsoring Rabbi Winston with two different places, Israel365.org. It's a news site that you have to go check out. It's got all the news about the Geula and all the news about the Geula through the eyes of the Torah, and also bringthemhome.org. If you're interested in Aliyah, you really must check out this website. It has lots of blogs, videos, and all kinds of wonderful information, pertinent information to help you get your process started for Aliyah. Tonight, of course, we bring Rabbi Pinchas Winston, who is the author of over 100 books on various topics, and author of a series of essays of weekly Torah's portions that I subscribe to and have probably, I don't even say how many years, maybe I can't get through my Shabbos without Rabbi Winston's Perceptions commentary on the Parsha. It's just something that it's a highlight of all of our Shabbos over in the Shamroth home. And tonight, Rabbi Winston will be speaking on a topic called angel boxing. So without further ado, Rabbi Winston, please join us.
Yeah. Not like putting the angel in the box, like Boxing Day, you pack things up. This is like, the boxing with the physical stuff that, it's like, it's so many stories that we take for granted. The Chumash, here we have the Chumash, last week's Parsha, this week's Parsha, next week's Parsha, the story of the brothers and the building of the Jewish people from scratch. And, you go after, year after year, you go through each one, you read this one, and then you get used to it, and you stop asking a lot of the questions and thinking about it. That's the way it was. That's, unusual, not the way things are today, but if the Torah records it that way, that's what it was, and God was fine with it because God told Moshe to write down everything he did. So who might the question? I mean, the commentaries they ask all the questions, they answer the questions too, and some go a little bit further deeper, but it's amazing how we take things for granted. Like, okay, that's the way it once was, and let's keep going. We got next week's Parsha, and then Hanukkah's coming up, and it's an interesting thing because it's just like almost a cognitive dissonance in a sense that unconsciously just accepting without trying to understand what it might mean in terms of the bigger picture and of course in terms of who we are and we live our lives. And there's quite a few places to stop, even for myself, after having read last week's Parsha, how many times I don't even know. Certainly not more than I'm alive these years, but a lot of times. And a lot of the questions I've had to deal with, and I myself and writing about them, and I've had answers and for different things and going deeper levels, and you learn a little Kabbalah, which explains things even more deeply and becomes even interestingly, more fascinating and the whole thing. But nonetheless, last week as I stand there listening to the Torah, reading, paying attention to the words, doing the best I can, Shabbos morning, and it's just some things just didn't sit right. It's like, not that, God forbid, I don't believe or don't accept or think there's something wrong there. The problem's with me. Right. The problem is that I'm missing something. I'm missing some information. If you had spoken about electricity 100 years before they invented it, they would have thought you're crazy. Now, is electricity crazy? No, obviously not, because we see it exists today and we use it all the time and no one questions it. So then what was the problem? The problem is the people you spoke about it with, the visionary who thought about the possibility and came up with the idea and then spoke about it with his family or friends, like, what, are you crazy? Right? And of course, the Wright brothers were considered to be the wrong brothers for the longest time until they actually were able to get a plane off the ground and start to fly. And here we are today with commercial jets. I'm still absolutely in awe and amazed at how this huge, massive, how many tons of metal floats through the air. That's what it looks like. From down here, it just looks like it's floating through the air as if it's a feather, as if it's made from cardboard or something. And yet, it's all aerodynamics and science and technology, but back at the time when the Wright brothers first suggested the possibility that man might be able to fly, they thought they were crazy because that's the way people are, right? They look at events and they can't possibly imagine how that could be based upon what they think reality is. And the same thing is true when it comes to these parshiyot. We're seeing things that go on and happen, and that's very, very strange, if you think about it, how this could possibly happen, because you've got these contradictions. On one hand, they're such great people, but she's jealous of her sister, and they're jealous of their brothers, and they sell it. All these things that, in a sense, if you wanted to teach your child how to, to be a mensch, to grow up and be a proper person, don't use these parshiyot. It seems like don't use these parshas, because all the things that are going on here. Don't be jealous of your brothers and sisters. No, don't do that. It's not a good thing. They were, right? Well, they're on a higher level, for certain things you can't be jealous, don't steal. He did. Well, it was for the right reasons, and certainly don't lie. Well, God changed the truth. Well, that's God. Well, so did Yosef's brothers. It's like, everything needs explanation. There's something going on. There's a concept that the Ramban, Nachmanides, speaks about, and it's a famous concept over the ages. Maisa avos siman lebanim. Maisa avos siman lebanim. What does it mean? It means that the actions of our forefathers are signs for the children, meaning that they're there to teach us something. All of it. It's all it teaches. It's not like us, We want to educate our children. We want to be a good example for other people. For the most part, we're living our lives, doing what we have to just to be ourselves and cope with our responsibilities and all that. But and we make a lot of mistakes. And a Jew has an additional responsibility to be a Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify the name of God, which means that even if you feel like doing something that everybody else does, but it's not so nice, you don't do it. Because people, but you're an Orthodox Jew. You're the Jewish people. You're supposed to live on a higher standard. I mean, people have told this to me, to my face, and it's true. But, we don't always think about that. And certainly in private, not the avos, not the forefathers and their wives, right? They were thinking future Jewish people the entire time. Whatever they did, it was to somehow impact the future nation that they knew was coming from them, and to teach us things that, even though they're going to be dead, but the Chumash is going to talk about it, and we're supposed to learn from these things. So if I'm not getting the right message, it has to do more with my perspective on things. And you see this all the time. People change their perspectives over time. In the beginning, a person becomes chosi b'tshuva. They come in, they're not religious in the beginning. They sit down, they argue about this and argue about this thing. It doesn't make sense to them. How can it be? And then they start to learn more and more and get more background information and a deeper understanding. And then a few years later, the questions disappear completely. Not because they stopped asking them, but because they realized the question only existed because of where I was coming from. But once I changed that, then now I can see where this is coming from. Nevertheless, there's a lot of things in these parshiyot that require a lot of discussion and investigation. And interestingly enough, one of them is not one that maybe a person would know about if they don't learn the Medrash. And I think Rashi also speaks about it. I remember it's a few days ago seeing it, but actually, the truth is, it is right there in Rashi. He talks about it. He mentions it. And that is, from the Torah, that if you're just reading the verses themselves, the Torah only speaks about the fact that Yaakov struggled with a stranger. The way it paints the picture in the Chumash is that Yaakov is moving his family across the Abok River, a northern tributary of the Jordan River, schlepping them across back and forth. And finally, he's left alone on one side. They're all on the other side, and he's at one side. And he meets up with a stranger. Pitom, out of nowhere, stranger shows up. Now it's possible. People traveled around, and there were marauders, and there were thieves, and bandits and all that. It's very possible that Yaakov just happened to meet up with somebody, and that's fine, right? And they stroll into the morning. But then the conversation that follows is very, very weird. And that is that, I say weird, I mean, unusual. Torah is not weird in any way. And so then Yaakov says, the angel says, I got to go. I got to leave, because it's my turn to, Rashi explains this part. It's my turn. All the angels take turns praising God. And the angel says, well, it's my turn now to go praise God. And I'm almost going to be late. And I waited all this time to be able to do it. So please let me go. So, Yaakov says, not until you bless me. Now, right there's a clue. We're not talking about some ordinary bandit, somebody you just happen to meet along the way and you fought the entire night. I mean, who fights the entire night with somebody? Usually it lasts maybe a little bit of time and someone beats the other guy up and you run away. But they fight the entire night until morning comes. So this is already a strange situation. And then Yaakov says, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. Huh? This is a guy who wants to rob you, wants to beat you up, wants to kill you maybe, right? So they maim you, and you're asking for a bracha, for a blessing? Well, obviously Yaakov knew this is not your everyday, ordinary stranger that you're fighting with. And the angel comes back and doesn't say, what? You want blessing from me? Who am I? No, he doesn't say that. And the angel says, he says, well, what's your name? He knew what his name was, but hey, what's your name? He says, my name is Yaakov. That's what they call it. Call me Yaakov. Ever since I was born, holding on to the heel of my brother, which is an Akiv, so I'm called Yaakov. And he says, no longer will you be called Yaakov, you will be called Yisrael. You'll be called Yisrael. Now, not really from now. You still will go through the episode in Shechem and Dinah, what happens over there, and then eventually you'll get through that. God willing, hopefully they'll be fine. And then God will confirm it later on. He doesn't tell him all this, but that's what happens at the end. And then God comes back and says, and Beit El says, okay, you are now officially called Yisrael. We changed your identity card in the Mizrah Panim, right? They also got it. It's all registered. Yaakov, Yisrael, it's all worked out now. And that's your name from this point onward. He will be called Yaakov sometimes, unlike Avram, who becomes Avraham. You can't call him Avram anymore as if that's his name. And Sarai is now Sarah. You can't call her Sarah except if you're reading, that's what she was once called, right? But even God refers to Yaakov as Yaakov. So the Gemara talks about this as a discussion unto itself, and as part of this discussion, which we probably will come back to, God willing, next week. But will be Hanukkah, actually, the first night of Hanukkah, God willing. And anyhow, so he tells him, this is your name. Your name is going to be called Yisrael from this point onward. And it's clear that this is not a normal struggle. And as Rashi points out, that this is actually an angel, that Yaakov actually fought with an angel the entire night, which is why he's called Yisrael, because the angel says, you know why you're called Yisrael? Ki sarisa im Elohim v'im anashim v'tuchal, because you fought with a godly being and with and people, right? Esav, Lavan, Shechem, you fought with all, and you prevailed. And somehow in the name Yisrael, because Yisrael, Sar, and it's all built into the name itself, but which heavenly being? With me. That's what you fought with me, the angel. And Rashi clarifies a little bit further and says it's actually the Sar of Esav, because every nation has its own ministering angel, and Esav was a nation, and he's going to become a massive nation. He's basically become all of Europe and America. It's like, the Christian world is all from Esav. The Islamic world comes from Ishmael, and there's the Jewish people. And then, smaller groups branch out here and there. But so he's fought with the angel of Esav, and he prevailed. And a lot of philosophical things come out of this, and that to do with the blessings when he took the blessings and the birthright, confirming it actually belongs there. But anyway, wait a second, just wait 1 second. He fought with an angel. Who in the world fights with an angel? That's question number one. And then question number two is, how do you do it? It's like, don't you put your hands through them? And they kind of like, ghosts. You try to grab them and you can't quite get them. What does it mean to fight with an angel? And why does it even have to happen in the first place? Why did to fight with an angel? Of all things, right? Just the Torah mentions it kind of matter-of-factly, just like you fought with Yaakov, just fought with Esav, you fought with Lavan, and you fight with an angel too. Why not? There's all kinds of people you can fight and godly beings you can fight with in this world, so you fight with an angel. So there's different possibilities how to explain this, because we see, for example, in the Garden of Eden, right, that the snake comes up to Chava, that's Eve, right, and has this whole dialogue and convinces her to eat from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the forbidden fruit. Now, the snake is a crafty little fellow, this guy. It's like, even the Torah calls him Arumi Kol HaChayot. He's like the most slippery, slimy type character. You should imagine him slither. He didn't actually slither that time. He still had legs, right? And he could walk. He could stand upright. He lost the legs because of what happened in the end. But he walks in, it's like, this, the classic guy in the movies, who's a con artist, and like, this is the snake that comes in and talks to Chava. Kabbalah explains not really true. In fact, the Talmud itself says that really the snake was not meant to be that. It was not meant to do that. The snake was actually meant to be a servant, like a butler for man and woman, Adam and Chava. That's what he would have been, a reliable servant in the household of the first man and woman. That changed because once Adam began to make the mistake of getting involved with the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, which is it's a longer process of just simply taking a fruit and eating it. It began before that, and Kabbalah talks about that too. Very fascinating, very insightful, very relevant in terms of today. But again, these are all different discussions. And what happened instead, because since Adam began to corrupt the world because of what he was doing, and he was doing it for altruistic reasons. Don't get the wrong idea. He was a tzaddik at the beginning, and he meant well. But unfortunately, as they say, to Gehenna is paved with good intention. You have to know what you're doing. Good intention is not enough to save you from making mistakes. You've got to work out the details too. And instead, what happened to the snake is the Sitra Achra, that's AKA Satan, or the Satan in Hebrew, right? They just corrupted and made it Satan instead. But the Satan is an angel, not like the devil that they do it in other cultures, but the Satan is an angel. He's an angel whose job it is, the word Satan actually means to obstruct something. And his job is to make us use our free will. That's his job. His job is to obstruct our path, to create challenge, spiritual challenge, moral challenge in life, that we can exercise our free will to overcome the challenge and grow spiritually. So he works for God. He does his job very well. In fact, unfortunately, so well that most people, they give up the fight before they even started. As the Ramchal points out, that's Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato. He puts, in the beginning of his Sefer, in Derech Hashem, his introduction, which is just worth knowing well unto itself before going to the rest of the book. He mentions the fact that we're always in battle. Constantly, we have a Yetzer Hara, which is an evil inclination, the source of our leaning towards the immoral thing, or even the amoral thing, and we have a Yetzer Tov, which pushes us in the direction of doing the right thing, the godly thing, the moral thing. That's what's supposed to happen. They're always in struggle, fighting against each other. And he says it doesn't end. I mean, some people were able to end it before they died, like Yitzchak, for example, but he's considered dead, even while he's still alive. Because once there's no Yetzer Hara, it may be blissful, but there's no free will either anymore. So you're not really living in the full sense of the term. But that's okay. As long as you lived up to the challenge, you accomplished all you meant to accomplish, so there's nothing so wrong. You just might get impatient and want to move on already to the next world, because all the challenges are over. David Melech, before he died also. But for the most part, a person, certainly in your younger years and your 80s, even 90s, there's still a Yetzer Hara. For sure. And there's a struggle going on. And he says, if you don't feel the struggle going on from moment to moment, day to day, you've lost the battle. You haven't won the battle. You've lost the battle. Even a tzaddik, right? A righteous person is fighting their Yetzer Hara on their level. They don't have any temptation to speak Lashon Hara necessarily, or to eat food that's not so kosher. That's not their thing. But wasting time on their level is a terrible, for us, it's not a good thing either, but it's understandable more, because on our level, we tend to do that somewhat, but on their level, where they have such a high appreciation of the moment, how could they possibly waste time? They have Yetzer Hara, and they're fighting against it the entire time. And Yaakov Avinu is also fighting against his Yetzer Hara. So what happens? So the snake is possessed. In other words, the Sitra Achra comes down into the snake and now talks through the snake. And the Leshem, the Bala Leshem, Shlomo Eliashiv, who was a Kabbalist who died around, I think it was 1926, one of the last main Kabbalists of the last 500 years, and respected by everybody. And he says, from the moment that the Sitra Achra came down from Shemayim, he's invisible, it's spiritual, you don't have to see it, and goes into the snake is no longer saying anything on his own. It's no longer him anymore. It's a Sitra Achra talking to the snake. But it sure sounds like the snake. If Chava had understood who was really talking to her, she might have backed off completely and said, forget it, I'm going to talk to my husband and get his advice. So she doesn't do that because she thinks she's talking to the snake. It's very easy for us to think we're talking to people and things and not knowing what's going on the inside there, what God's, how God's affecting the person who's interacting with us. And that's what happens. So the angel is in the snake, but the snake is the outer body. So maybe it's possible that the angel of Asa wasn't just an angel, but it was embodied in some physical presence. Just like, for example, Abraham fed angels. The angels came to visit him after God saw, after Bris Milah, that he was lacking the pleasure, even though he was in pain, lacking the pleasure of taking care of guests. So God brought guests, but he sent angels. And the angels, they don't eat food and things like that, but they went through the motions because they were being good guests. That Abraham should at least feel that he's taking care of the guests. And they looked physical. They looked like real things. So, this battle with the angel might have been like that, where it was really the angel. The angel came down, but he was fighting with somebody else, who in whom this angel went that may be created just for the moment. Just like, for example, the angels that came to Abraham, they weren't people walking around just got possessed by. No, God created the whole thing. The angel came down and put the clothing, the body on, whatever's necessary. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter. You can just imagine, where were you last night? The next morning, Yaakov shows up limping as well until he gets healed, and his family. What happened to you last night? You won't believe what happened. It's like the weirdest thing. Like getting the small little jar of oil. That's what he went back for. And in the process of doing that, this stranger shows up. It turns out it's an angel. It's an angel of Asa. The entire night we're fighting, me and this angel. Yeah, okay. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you sure? An angel? It's like, okay, well, whatever you say. Let's move on. It's like unusual story. But some say, right, that actually it was Yaakov fighting against himself. He was actually struggling with inner turmoil. That that there was a Yetzer Tov, but on a very high level. Some say the angel actually was the angel of the Jewish people, Michael, not the angel of Asa. It was actually, I think the Yalkut Shimoni says that it was the angel of the Jewish people. But how does that fit? How's he fighting with his own angel, so to speak? Because we all have these inner struggles. But the point of these inner struggles is to raise us up to higher levels. So whatever is necessary, that's what God sends. God is involved in everything. Then we say Gamzu L'Tova. Gamzu L'Tova means it's all for the good. Famous expression. We're always supposed to say whatever goes wrong in our lives, no matter how bad. Well, Gamzu L'Tova. This too is for the good. Another way of saying the same thing is Kol Mad Rachman Avid L'Tova Avid. All that God does, the merciful one does, he does for the good. What does that mean, though, in the end? Because everything in life, for every individual, is about tikkun, rectification. We are not here just to go from 0 to 85 and whatever we accomplish along the way. We're all reincarnated, right? We're all recycled souls, not because God ran out of them and not because the environment is saved because we're using old souls, because the souls have to keep working towards rectification. It's all about Shar HaGilgulim, the gate of reincarnations by the Arizal, the premier Kabbalist, certainly of the last 500 years, if not longer. His teachings, the gate of reincarnations, which talks about, of course, reincarnation, but about personal tikkun, personal rectification. From the very first page, it's clear that's all that's going on. From the moment you're a bar mitzvah or a bas mitzvah, you're working on personal, even before really, but that's when it becomes officially your job, when you become obligated to mitzvahs, personal rectification. And you get married, you go to school, you have children, you get a job, whatever you do, whatever responsibility you take on, doesn't make a difference. Whatever activity you're involved with, it's always about rectification. And the more focused you are on this, the more you take advantage of the opportunity, because that's what God sends us. Everything is just an opportunity for rectification. Now, This is what it means, Gamza Latova. Because as far as we're concerned, that Kam Yom Kippur, Al-Chet, a little rectification at times like that because we're being judged. Rosh Hashanah, Yisrael Tshuva, it's a time for rectification. The rest of the year, sometimes maybe depends. If we're going through something that's difficult, and we have to figure out whether or not we're God's getting back at us for something. So then we maybe work on try to figure out what it is that we might be missing in life, and try and rectify. But for the most part, the person feels that life is just for living. It's so distracting anyhow. I mean, especially once you get married, you have kids, you have a job, and even if you're learning, full time, there's just so much going on that who's got time to think about personal rectification? Well, I mean, righteous people do perhaps, and and really sensitive people, growth-oriented people perhaps. But this is what Gamza Latova means. Gamza Latova means that even though you may not be focused on personal rectification, and you may not even know what it is, you might not have figured out what you're here to fix up, although it's not so hard, because all I really do is figure out where you are spiritually weak. What am I lacking? We know what do I struggle with? Here's the Torah mitzvahs. Here's what God says, do this, right? And here's what the halacha says how to do it. What's the ideal way of doing it? Now, how do I measure up to all of that? Based upon my capability, based upon my financial situation, based upon all my givens, my nesuni, right? All the things that are relevant to me specifically. How do I measure up? Well, over here, I'm good. I get to minyan on time, right? I never cheat people. I never lie. I don't even think about it. I try to do this mitzvah with intention. I pray, But this one over here, I tend to don't do it so well. That's a weakness. It's a spiritual weakness. And if I have a spiritual weakness, then I'm here to fix up. It's not like people. Well, I'm good. I'm great at this. Unfortunately, that's one of my weaknesses. What are you gonna do? No one's perfect. You have to live with, roll with the punches, as they say. No. Your strengths are the gifts that you were given, or maybe developed also, but it's also what help to work on your weaknesses, to fix your weaknesses. Because whatever you don't fix up now, you come back again. Although we're very close to the end of history, which means there's not a lot of time to come back and do much rectifying from this point onward. But that's what it's all about. So Gamza Latova means, and all that God does, he does for the good, means that God's always focused on a rectification. He's only concerned about a rectification. Not like, it's 6 o'clock, time to rectify, right? Let me give him a test. No, it's like every single second, you're consciously, at nighttime you go to sleep, your soul goes up to Shemayim, goes up to heaven, right? And goes to the study halls or wherever you have to go, and your soul is educated in what it has to do with its purpose. Before you're born, it says an angel goes into the womb and talks to the soul, not to the baby. The baby's just not even woken up yet. It's just still inside the womb, and it's a fetus. But the soul is not a baby. There's no such thing as a baby soul or an adult soul. A soul's a soul. So soul's totally conscious, totally with it, totally aware. And the angel says to the soul, you have to be a tzaddik, 100%. Sign in the dotted line. When you're going to be born, you're going to be a tzaddik. What happens? Well, you get hit. You come out, start to cry. You can't control your body. The soul gets used to this after a while. And then the struggle begins at bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah, and the rest of your life. And besides, who talks about it? Who talks about personal rectification? Even in yeshivas, where people learn Talmud all day long and halacha, their musar is a little bit, a little easier. But how much of a consciousness of personal rectification do we have? Not that much. So who's going to work on it? Personally, when I read Shor HaGilgulim the first time, it was an interesting story because I had not intended to read it. I actually wasn't so much into those things at that time. I figured it must be interesting, but I had other priorities. In fact, my neighbor walked up to my front door with a little black book and said, "Here, you'll probably enjoy this more than I will." So I took it, put the shelf. It was actually, I think, a couple of months before I finally took it with me in the bus and began to look at it. But once I went into it, didn't take my eyes off of it. Now, 20 years later, it's still one of the premier sources of information that I use. I even translated it into English You can see it through Amazon. It's available because it's just information that people have to know. Personal rectification, you have to know. There's just so much you have to know about who you are and what you're made of and how to rectify yourself and how to perfect yourself, because it's not just you're going to increase your portion in the world to come, which of course you're going to, but you enhance your life now. You enhance your life now. We send people to school to learn things, even just secular material, English and math, and because this is going to enhance your life. If you drop out and you leave all these things behind, it's not that you won't just be smart, but you'll be missing out on things that will allow you to be able to appreciate every moment of life more, better. How much more so with information that specifically focuses on personal rectification. And once you get into the mentality, right, your whole life becomes like this, and you just find yourself recognizing opportunities for spiritual growth more and more all the time. And hopefully you can stay ahead of them, because even after all the material that I've seen, a lot of times I only realize after the fact, oh, that was an opportunity. But at least I could see it after the fact. Before, I didn't see it at all. And then you build towards hopefully seeing in advance. And there's, I'll tell you, it's a tremendous feeling when you're able to recognize an opportunity to grow in advance as it's happening. So you could say to yourself consciously, something, I feel like doing that, but I'm not going to do that this time. This time I'm going to stay calm and cool, and I'm going to respond to it in a spiritually mature way. And you do it, and it works. You walk away, you feel, wow, I've grown. And there's angels all around us. And I don't just mean the nice people who help you out, the nice people who make you feel good about yourself. They're also angels to some degree. There's a famous story in Tanakh of Elisha, who was a prophet, and Gehazi, his right-hand man, for quite a while. And what happened was the king of Aram wanted to, at that time, the kingdom of the Jewish people was divided into two. After King Solomon, his son divided the kingdom with Yeravam, who came from Benjamin, from Joseph's line. And there were two kingdoms: the northern kingdom of Israel and the main, the kingdom of Yehuda. And the kingdom of Israel functioned independently. And the king of Aram wanted to ambush the king of Israel and go to war and capture them. And what happened was that Elisha, through prophecy, knew about this, and he informed the Israelites, the kingdom of Israel, about the impending ambush, and they were prepared. So they avoided it. So the king of Aram was very upset, who snitched? Who spilled the beans about this whole thing? There's somebody in our army who's working for the Jewish people. So his general or whoever told him, no, nobody here. Everyone's loyal, but you should know they have a prophet. And his name is Elisha. And he told the king of Israel what you plan to do. And that is what saved them. So the king of Aram said, well, that's not acceptable. Let's go get him. Let's go deal with him before he ruins everything. So they actually find out where he is. And they go out, they locate the town, and they surround it. The next morning, or at some point in time, Gehazi goes outside, and he sees this mass army all around. He knows why they're there. He panics. So he says to his master, Elisha, says, we're surrounded, we're outnumbered. We're never going to make it. Prophet or no prophet. So Elisha says, nothing to worry about. We have more people on our side. We have more on our side, not people per se. We have more on our side. He said, more? Where? Why don't even the townspeople don't number that many people? And they're certainly not going to fight for us, right? So what do you mean more? So at that point in time, Elisha, one of my favorite stories, Elisha turns to God and says, open the eyes of the lad, that he can see what I can see. And God actually complies. And he gives him like a prophecy somewhat because of Elisha. And he opens his eyes and he sees the hills and the mountains are filled with angels on whatever they're on, ready to pound on the Aramean army, that's what it's called, and save Elisha. Of course, that's exactly what happens. They're spared the entire situation because they certainly, spiritually speaking, and outnumber their enemy. So there were angels all over the place, but he couldn't see them. He could, Alicia could see them or be aware of them. Today also, 100%. There's always angels. I mean, some angels that have interesting sense of humor. Something that happen, where did that come from? And sometimes I think they actually roll in the aisles because of something that we do down here that probably seems strange and weird to them. The fact that we can't see angels, the fact that we're not always aware of them, does not mean that they're not here. In fact, that's the way prayer works today. For the most part, our prayers don't go directly to God. God can hear them directly. He just chooses to act as if he doesn't, because that's all part of exile, part of Hester punning. So it says that angels receive our prayer. They pass them on to angels on a different level, pass on to angels on a different level. It's just another technical way of saying that there's, it's a little longer gap to reach God these days through our prayer, which means you have to work harder and certainly have a lot of intention when you pray to make sure that your prayers get to where they're going, where they have to go. Because it's not just like boom, boom, like that. It's like you get on the phone, you call them, and 2 seconds later they answer the phone, you talk to them. God hears your prayers in your heart before you even say them. He knows what you're going to ask for before you know what you're going to ask for. But for the sake of history and for the sake of free will and for the sake of, ever is important for the continuity of the Jewish people, etc., God has it set up in such a way that we have to work through angels to be able to accomplish. And if your prayer lacks the oomph to go up, it may get up 3 angels and fall back down again. That always reminds me of that thing at the amusement park. You hit the hammer and you hit it, and you hit the really hard, it goes all the way to the top, it rings the bell, and you get a prize. If you hit it only a little bit, it goes a little bit up, and you thought it was a real strong swing, but boom, only that high, and falls back down again. You didn't do nothing, but you certainly didn't accomplish what you want to accomplish. And I think this is a large part of the Maisa Avos Siman Labanim here. What's going on with our forefather, in order to teach us about life. They were greater than great. They were on a whole different level. They were almost angels themselves. I mean, the last 17 years of Yaakov's life, he was like an angel. And he didn't have to die. He just went to a higher level where physicality was no longer what it is down here, and we just couldn't see him anymore because it's such a high level. And the problem is not with him. The problem is with our ability to be able to see. And that's what Hanukkah is all about, which we'll talk about, God willing, more next week. But that's what the whole point of Hanukkah is, the Or HaGenuz. The Or HaGenuz is the hidden light of creation that God made at the beginning. And the Talmud says that with this light, Adam HaRishon was able to see from one end of the world until the other end of the world. Not because physically you could just, have telescopic eyes and see so far, but because we see with our mind's eye anyhow. The reason why we have to wear glasses and physically look and use our eyes and I can't see around the corner is because of Adam HaRishon's chet. He physicalized the world, and we're trying to spiritualize the world. And the more you spiritualize the world, the more you're able to access this light that allows you to see with your mind's eye much more than your physical eyes could ever allow you to see. That's what they say about Yaakov. And a few parshas from now, Yaakov will say to the sons, there's a famine going on. Go down to Egypt. I hear there's food there. And they asked the question, how did Yaakov know? He was the one sitting in the tent the entire time. They're on the streets. How did they know? His sons. With Ruach HaKodesh. With divine inspiration, with prophecy. He saw with his mind's eye. He was able to understand and connect. It's hard for us to relate to that because we don't have it. It's not something that we're used to. We've been raised in this Greek-oriented based world that's so pragmatic that does not require trust in God anymore because we just do everything very, technically the way the rest of the world does it. And we've lost so much of that spiritual thread that made us unique as a nation. As a result of that, we've dropped down levels and we're being affected by the exact same thing that everyone else is being affected by. But Yaakov's struggle with the angel, whatever it was, an actual angel, right? An angel inside something else, a psychological battle, spiritual, it was real. because it does make a difference. It was real. Because reality is basically what you make of it. And if God set the situation up in such a way that this is what, and it's confirmed in the end that he fought with an angel, whatever, because of the whole blessing thing, because of the whole name change, because of what the description of what's taking place and how the dust rose up to Shemaim. Doesn't have to be metaphors, because it's a reality. And the reality is that everybody is struggling with the angel of Esav too. In the moment you fight with Yetzer Hara, you're also struggling with the Sitra Achra, the Satan, because he works through your Yetzer Hara. He sets up the scenarios that challenge us. We have natiyas, we lean towards certain things, and all of a sudden, temptation arises, and we exposed to something that we might have avoided, but we didn't for some reason. That's fighting with the angel of Esav too. But we see that Yaakov fought through the entire night. He didn't give up. He held on until the very end. Exhausting? Unquestionably. Scary? Maybe also, right? For him even, right? But it doesn't make a difference. Because at the end of the day, when the sun rose, everything was explained. Everything was clear. It's interesting because it says, Rashi brings down that towards in the whole struggle, he brings down when the angel says, "Let me go, I got to go back to Shemayim." So Rashi brings the verse from Hosea that says, "Ubecha v'chanein lo," right? And the angel cried out, "Becha," who he cried, "v'chanein lo," and he pleaded with him. It's interesting because these parshiyot are always read around Hanukkah time. And if you look at the words Becha, it can actually be read B'chof Hey on the 25th. Base Chof Hey on the 25th. V'idchanein. And there was a Chain. Chain, Chanukah, right? 25th of Kislev. Lo. 36. On the 25th, what? Day of Kislev? Maybe that's when they fought. There was a Chain. Now, that's the basis of Hanukkah. Low of 36. Somehow in this battle, Yaakov was able to access the hidden light of creation. Somehow through this battle, he was able to bring out his chen and chen into the world, like Noah was saved because of his chen, we spoke about before in the past, right? That of Lo is the Gematria 36. And if you think that's a little far-fetched, well, it says as he was limping away from this battle, V'yizrach lo hashemesh, the sun shone for him. V'yizrach lo, 36 shone for him. The Maharil, he says, what shone for him? The 36 candles of Hanukkah. So what, they had a menorah Chanuki already? Anyhow, you don't light 36 at one time, so we need the 36 candles of Hanukkah. It means that whatever Hanukkah embodies, whatever it represents, whatever the concept of Hanukkah is, and we'll see it goes back to Maaseh Bereshis, goes back, it's primordial Hanukkah. It took a while, to bring it into reality, schlepped out through history until it finally became a holiday, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there back at the beginning. It was, in fact, in some respects, more than anything else. More than else. Purim too, right? But, yeah. And somehow, when Yaakov fought this battle to get to his essential self, to overcome his tendencies that were bringing him down or could bring him down. Instead, he fought against them and he went up. He earned the name Yisrael. And that was a Chen 36, because somehow all that's tied in with the whole message of Hanukkah, which, God willing, will be the subject of next week's discussion. Anyhow, have a wonderful Shabbat and the rest of your week. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to deal with them right now. Does that mean there's no questions? I'm going to assume that means true. Okay. Shabbat Shalom.